It was just another busy afternoon at Lincoln High School when hundreds of students lined up in the cafeteria for lunch. Among them stood Ethan Parker, a quiet 16-year-old boy wearing a faded gray sweatshirt and worn blue jeans. Ever since his father had passed away, Ethan had been living with his grandmother, who struggled to afford food and rent. Despite his hardships, he never complained, studied hard, and always treated everyone with kindness. That day he reached the front of the lunch line holding his tray and quietly asked if he could receive the free meal provided by the school. Before he could finish speaking, the cafeteria manager, Linda Brooks, leaned over the serving counter and shouted loudly, "The food isn't for you!" Her angry voice echoed through the entire cafeteria as hundreds of students stopped eating and turned to watch. Embarrassed, Ethan lowered his head while Linda continued scolding him, accusing him of trying to take food he didn't deserve. Several students pulled out their phones and began recording the humiliating scene, while others whispered among themselves. Ethan quietly apologized and turned to leave without taking a single bite, determined not to argue. At that exact moment, the cafeteria doors opened and a tall, well-dressed man in a navy blue business suit walked inside, followed by two security officers. His name was Daniel Parker, founder and CEO of one of the country's largest technology companies and a major donor to the school's student meal program. He had arrived unexpectedly to inspect how his charitable foundation was helping students in need. As he witnessed the heartbreaking scene, he stopped in his tracks. Looking directly at the cafeteria manager, he calmly stepped forward and said in a firm voice, "Say that again." The entire cafeteria fell silent, unaware that the next few minutes would change everyone's lives forever. The cafeteria became so quiet that even the sound of trays being placed on tables disappeared. Linda Brooks slowly turned around and saw the tall man in the navy blue suit walking toward her with two security officers following behind him. Believing he was just another visitor, she crossed her arms and repeated loudly, "I said the food isn't for him. He doesn't belong in this line." Daniel Parker looked at Ethan, whose eyes remained fixed on the floor, too embarrassed to speak. Daniel gently picked up Ethan's empty lunch tray and placed it back on the serving counter before turning to the cafeteria manager. "Do you know who paid for every free meal served in this cafeteria?" he asked calmly. Linda shrugged and replied, "I don't care who paid for it. I decide who eats here." The entire cafeteria gasped. Daniel slowly reached into his pocket and showed his identification card. "My name is Daniel Parker," he said. "I'm the founder of the Parker Foundation. Every dollar that keeps this meal program running comes from my company." Linda's face instantly turned pale. Students exchanged shocked looks as teachers rushed into the cafeteria after hearing the commotion. Daniel looked at Ethan and quietly asked, "Son, have you eaten today?" Ethan hesitated before softly answering, "No, sir. I just wanted something to eat before my afternoon classes." Daniel placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder and said, "From today onward, you'll never have to wonder if you deserve a meal. Every student who is hungry deserves dignity, not humiliation." Then turned back toward the cafeteria manager and asked the school principal, who had just arrived, "Is this how your students are treated?" Unable to answer, the principal lowered his head in shame. In front of hundreds of students, Daniel announced that no child should ever be embarrassed for being poor and promised that what happened today would never happen again. At that moment, everyone realized the man standing beside Ethan wasn't just a successful CEO. He was someone who believed kindness mattered more than money. The story of what happened in the cafeteria spread across the entire school before lunchtime had even ended. Students who had recorded the confrontation uploaded the videos online, and within hours, millions of people had watched Ethan's heartbreaking humiliation and Daniel Parker's unexpected intervention. Reporters gathered outside Lincoln High School while parents demanded answers from the school board. Inside the principal's office, the cafeteria manager, Linda Brooks, sat silently as the investigation began. Security camera footage confirmed that Ethan had done nothing wrong and had politely requested the free meal he was entitled to receive. Daniel Parker listened quietly before standing and saying, "This was never just about one meal. It was about treating a child as if he had no value." The school board, unanimously decided to dismiss Linda from her position and announce mandatory kindness and respect training for every employee. Daniel then surprised everyone with another announcement. Through the Parker Foundation, he pledged enough funding to provide free breakfast and lunch to every student in the school, ensuring that no child would ever be singled out because of financial hardship again. The cafeteria erupted in applause as students realized no one would have to choose between hunger and embarrassment ever again. Daniel then invited Ethan to stand beside him. Nervous and overwhelmed, Ethan hesitated until Daniel smiled and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You should never feel ashamed because your family is struggling," Daniel said. "Real strength is continuing to study hard and remain kind even when life is unfair." Tears filled Ethan's eyes as the entire cafeteria stood and applauded him. For the first time since losing his father, he felt seen, respected, and valued. As everyone celebrated, Daniel quietly told Ethan that he had read about his excellent grades and determination despite difficult circumstances. He offered Ethan a full educational scholarship through the Parker Foundation, covering his school expenses, books, meals, and future college tuition if he continued working hard. Ethan could barely believe what he was hearing. What had begun as the most humiliating day of his life was becoming the day that changed his future forever. A few weeks later, Lincoln High School held a special assembly in the gymnasium, attended by students, teachers, parents, and community leaders. The story that had once begun with humiliation had now become a symbol of compassion and hope. As Ethan Parker walked into the auditorium wearing a clean school uniform provided through the Parker Foundation, he was greeted with a standing ovation from hundreds of students. He looked around in disbelief, remembering the day he had stood in the cafeteria feeling ashamed and hungry. Daniel Parker stepped onto the stage and addressed the audience. "A school should never be a place where a child is judged because of poverty," he said. "Every student deserves respect, kindness, and the opportunity to succeed." His words were met with thunderous applause. The principal then announced that the school cafeteria would officially be renamed the Parker Student Meal Center, a reminder that no child would ever be denied a meal because of financial hardship again. Daniel also revealed that the Parker Foundation was expanding the free meal program to dozens of schools across the state, ensuring that thousands of children would never have to study on an empty stomach. He then turned toward Ethan with a warm smile and handed him an official scholarship certificate covering his education through college, along with a mentorship opportunity at his technology company after graduation. Ethan, overwhelmed with emotion, thanked Daniel and promised to work hard, help others, and never forget the kindness that had changed his life. Many students in the audience wiped away tears, realizing that a single act of compassion could completely transform someone's future. As the ceremony ended, Daniel quietly reminded everyone that success is not measured by wealth or power, but by how we treat those who have the least. Ethan left the stage no longer feeling like the lonely boy who had been embarrassed in the lunch line. He walked out with confidence, hope, and a future brighter than he had ever imagined. Never judge someone by their clothes or their circumstances. The person standing quietly beside you today may become tomorrow's greatest success, and one act of kindness can change a life forever. If you enjoyed this emotional story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories filled with justice, compassion, and unforgettable twists. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.